Welcome again to the Film Buffet podcast. As always, I'm your film buff, Tom. With me today is Rob. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me again.
And let us welcome back Mr. Beyond Bliz.
Yeah, it's good to be back, guys.
Miss Amy Pascal. We've got the answer to what Kevin Feige's face meant in that famous interview where she claimed that Venom was going to be adjunct to, I think that's the word she used, the Spider-Man MCU universe, and then Kevin Feige come out and stated that that was not true. Venom and Black Cat and Sable were all still going to be in their own separate universe from the MCU. So what is your guys' take on that?
Okay, Rob, I'm going to let you go first because as soon as I go, I'm going to start ranting, so I'll give it to you. You go first.
I think Amy Pascal needs to get back on her meds. I mean,
Or stop some?
Change medications, see a new doctor, take your pick. Every time, I think I've said this repeatedly, every time she opens her mouth, there's someone usually there that's probably saying, just stop talking. Please stop talking. Kevin Feige probably called her into his office or probably had a meeting with her afterwards and said, just shut up. You don't have to say anything. I will handle this. It's no surprise that the word would come down that really she's full of shit,
I seen today they had a press conference for Spider-Man Homecoming, and there she was, tucked on the end. She got to answer one question. RDJ piped up. He even managed to make her look pretty dumb, even when she wasn't trying to be. So.
Okay.
But
well,
yeah, so she needs to just keep her mouth shut. I think Rob's right on that. So yeah, how do you go ahead beyond let her rip?
Okay, I'm going to tell you why it's stupid. Okay, basically, first of all, no one is going to see a Venom movie if it's not in the MCU. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, originally they say, oh, it's not in the MCU. We're like, oh, this is stupid and dumb. And then all of a sudden now we hear from Amy Pascal's like, well, actually, it's going to be in the MCU. And you saw Kevin Feige's like, oh, God, what's happening? And then, they clarified. He clarified, said, no, it's not in the MCU. And then everyone's just like, well, what's the point? Because, like I said, no one's going to want to see, especially, okay, I'll say this. Venom has a chance of actually doing pretty decent. It's the silver and black thing that's really bothering me, where it's like, you can tell this is like basically the leftover of the entire implosion that is the Amazing Spider-Man cinematic universe. And Amy Pascal's like, you know what? I still want to make that silver and black movie, so let's do it anyway. And it's kind of like, no one knows who Blackhead is. Again, I remember mentioning this before, way back to you, Tom, where people are going to be like, you mean Catwoman? Like, people are going to be so confused. And people don't even know who Super Sable is at all. So it's like, what is she thinking? Exactly. It's like, what is she thinking? It's like Sony is, again, they're at this position where they are so desperate for a franchise that despite the fact that they are collaborating with a studio that has a proven track record, they still have the audacity and the tenacity to say, you know what? Let's try to do a universe with all the other Spider-Man characters are connected to the Spider-Man universe. That's pretty smart. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, so you basically want to lose money and you want to alienate your audience because if it is not connected to the MCU, ultimately if they come out and say because there's still time they can switch around because they're doing a lot of double talk right now. But if it's solidified that it's not in the MCU, I will not see the movie opening weekend because I will not support something that I feel is basically them trying to use the MCU brand to further their own and try to, basically say, oh, it may not be, to try to trick people. Like Andre said.
I think you're right.
They're basically trying to hijack.
I think that's what she was trying to do. I think when we were kind of speculating on if Sony was kind of trying to use the Venom Black Sable universe to wedge their way into Marvel and cause them to basically have no choice but to be a part of it, I think that was true. And I think basically Amy picked the wrong time and the wrong person to say it in front of because...
See, I think sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I
go ahead.
think what she was doing is that she was trying to use the press as negotiation, and that makes sense.
In a way,
a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like directors, like we'll see in the great examples, Michael Bay, where he's like, oh, I may do Transformers 6, I might not, unless someone gives me a boatload of money and backs it up into my driveway. So I think we're seeing the same thing here, where she's trying to tease it, or at least trying to leverage her way into having to be part of the MCU, and Kevin Feige's like, oh, God. It's like, what did I get myself into? I can see the face he made personified what everyone else felt, like this sense of like no communication and discombobulated. Everything is just all over the place, pretty much.
Yeah, I think she tried to pull a power play. She saw an opportunity to use the press to her advantage, and I think it backfired on her. It backfired in a big way because I'm pretty sure either she was too dumb. She either planned this or she was too dumb to know better. Take your pick. Kevin Feige's in the driver's seat, really, in this whole thing, in the whole in the Spider-Man Marvel deal. Even though Sony has the rights, Kevin Feige is the one that's calling the shots, and he probably just put the kibosh right on it. So like, I imagine it was, don't you ever fucking do that to me again, or part of my language, but.
Nah, no worries. I think the whole 3 listeners, I don't think they'll care.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure our listeners.
It's pretty well justified in this instance, I will say so.
Okay, good to know that. But anyway, like I said about how she, there's that whole thing. You have to pick your spots. This was not the spot to pick right there. It really wasn't. I mean, this was not the opportunity to do this. And she's not going to pay any price, but there's going to be some reverberations probably behind the scenes for this.
Oh, yeah. I think, like I said, it was either the last podcast or the podcast before where we had discussed the situation. I think that she's basically setting it up to where, okay, fine. Now Sony knows that they have the card to play if they do manage to get this Venom movie underway, which they're shooting for a year, which I don't see happening. I really don't. Spider-Man...
Yeah, they're trying to fast track.
Spider-Man Homecoming was a fast turnaround, and that took 2 years from basically announcing it. So it's going to be tough to see this movie in a year. I don't see it happening. Again, I think it was a situation, and if it happens, what Sony is hoping for is if it's a hit, fine. But if it does fail, they're going to turn around and blame Marvel for it failing, is what they're going to do. They're going to say, well, you wouldn't let us have it be part of the Marvel universe, hence that's why it failed. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally get that, yeah.
Absolutely.
But the other thing, though, is that she's wanted this glass ceiling project for ages.
Right.
Yeah, and she wants this to happen more than anything because the whole girl power thing, and probably now with Wonder Woman being a success, and we'll probably get into that later, she sees an opening here to sort of push this to the forefront.
And I kind of said that too. I said, what was it, either last episode or when we were talking about this, I said, or it was right after Wonder Woman came out, I can see now them fast-tracking Black Cat and Silver Sable because of Wonder Woman's success. More so than I see them getting Venom done in a year. Because I don't see Black Cat and Sable, needing as much money to be made plus special effects and all that kind of stuff compared to Venom, as opposed to where I can see that getting done in a year and a half or a year and 3 months. I don't see a Venom movie getting done in a year and 3 months. There's just no way that's happening.
But we were saying about this.
I agree. Yeah, especially if they want to have Carnage in it too. Sorry to interrupt. They're supposedly going to have Carnage in the movie. I just wanted to mention that. And that's going to take a lot of special effects just to do that alone.
And I called that, by the way.
Yeah, but we were saying before, though. I mean, nobody knows who Black Cat or Silver Sable really is, and really the only way to get that movie made is to have Spider-Man in it, and to use that as a selling point. To these are also characters that are associated with Spider-Man, and to try to piggyback that on top of that.
Right, and that's what I think they were trying to, or at least Amy in part was trying to do there.
Yeah. That she's trying to leverage this and to get what she wants.
I think, and this is a prediction, I always like to make predictions. What do you guys think will happen if Venom fails?
I think that they forget about it. This is okay, we made a Venom movie, let us never speak of it again. And they try to sweep it under the rug as fast as possible. It'll probably run on basic cable for a couple years, and they'll try to recoup some money that way. But I think the whole plan that she has will go to pot, and it'll cost somebody their job, whether it's hers or somebody will be fired for it, but it'll be written off as yet another Sony failure.
Yeah, it just comes down to a point of I don't see this movie doing too well. It'll open because it's Venom. If it has legs or not will all depending on how they handle the film, if it's actually any good or not. And of course, I don't see it being as bad as Catwoman bad, but I see it somewhere in that Daredevil Elektra range to where it'll come out, it'll just kind of, and then everybody will forget about it, like Rob said. And then maybe Sony will turn around and try and sue Marvel for it failing, and that'll be about it.
Well, Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach are listed as producers.
Right.
Right along with Amy Pascal.
And as far as I know, Avi Arad and Kevin Feige do not get along anymore. From what I've heard, anyway.
And like you said, he remembers when Kevin Feige used to get him coffee. So.
Right. And I'm sure he loves to hear that story.
Avi's getting Kevin coffee.
He's at least helping him pay for it anyway, in one way or the other. Okay, so basically from that point of view, there's not much else to probably cover on the Venom front for now till we know more, I guess. Ron Howard, of course, did get announced as the new director of the Han Solo film since we last recorded. We kind of figured he was going to take the role.
Yeah, pretty much. I think one of the things, too, I'll say is that I was watching Collider Jedi Council the other day because I know they covered this as well. And one of the things like that, I think... I forgot his name. I'll throw his name, his face up on the screen, is that he was saying how basically Ron Howard isn't necessarily going to be directing. He's just there legally so they can have potentially, what's the writer's name? Kasdan to direct.
Lawrence Kasdan? Yeah.
Lawrence Kasdan,
Right.
have him direct it. You know, like I said before, there is some legality issues, and that's the way they can basically have a loophole and get around it, where basically Ron Howard would just be there and be like, okay, what do you want me to do? You know, he's basically going to be the extension of Kasdan. Pretty much.
And if that's true, then that does go with the rumor that I heard last week when we talked about it, where I said that Kasdan had already taken over production. That was the rumor before they even went into break.
Right. Because you can tell they like I said, these tabloids that come out, they're always steps ahead. They're already doing the stuff that they already announce to the public. They're just kind of basically giving us the information in chunks, so it doesn't pile up on them.
Well, and what we have here is a very similar situation to something else we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And that is where you have a situation where directors come on now, even if it's just in name only, and a production that even though we just found out in a matter of days what was going on with this production, this has been going on for a while. Because first of all, I've seen people complain, well, and we even said it ourselves, why wasn't this addressed weeks ago? Why wasn't this addressed months ago? It probably was. It's probably something that's been coming on now for at least a month and a half, 2 months. They're supposed to be reshooting almost the whole damn movie. So
yeah, the whole movie's going to pretty much be redone. I mean, at this point, kind of like what we're seeing with Justice League.
Which, yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. That's what I was referring to. But yeah, so we have a situation now where I think Andre's video that he brought out the other day was a very good analysis of the situation. It's a mess. It could have been a lot worse. But Disney's publicists need a raise because they were on top of the shit. They had it under control. Even though whoever it was, if it was Chris and
Phil Lord,
yeah, if it was their publicists that come out first, and then Disney answered back, however it worked out, because at first it was they left, and then we got no, they were fired. And not only are they fired, we already have a replacement in mind. And there was 3 names bandied around, and that was Ron Howard, Lawrence Kasdan, and Joe Johnston. And I knew Ron Howard was probably the front runner, but then again, like I pointed out in the last podcast when we were talking about it, that Kasdan has already been real close to the production. But then Rob had also heard the same thing I heard, was that he may not legally be able to take over the production because he's a writer and the rules that go along with that. So it's very possible. But I don't see them, at the same time, I got to kind of disagree a little bit with what they're saying, because I don't see them bringing on somebody like Ron Howard if he's just going to be a yes man to Lawrence Kasdan. He's going to have a lot more to do with it, I think, than what we probably think. But that's a good choice. He knows how to handle actors. He knows.
He's worked with George Lucas before,
right.
So he has a little bit of the extended
he's part
family
of the Lucasfilm family already, yes, and
right.
And he's also handled big productions with what I was going to say in relation to that. So we know he can handle this. It's in good hands. I'm not concerned. My concern was with, and it still is, we've got a movie that nobody really wanted or asked for in the first place. So now it has even more expectations attached to it, because it wasn't just so much before that, people are like, oh, I don't know about a Han Solo movie. But now you got a situation where the movie has to be good because you've had so much controversy surrounding it.
Right. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to say, I think that if The Last Jedi comes out, and from what I feel, I think it's going to be one of the best sci-fi films of this generation. I think it's going to make The Force Awakens pretty much look like some crappy sci-fi movie throwaway, like, I don't know, like
Dark Star.
Like Dark Star. It's going to make it look like that or whatever. But I think if The Last Jedi is as phenomenal and as groundbreaking as I have a feeling it's going to be, it's only going to put the pressure more on Han Solo. Yeah. And people are going to be on that high. And if Han Solo... Because there was a part of me when I was seeing the production come together, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But I was like, Phil Lord, Chris Miller, that's kind of a little weird choice. And the way the production and everything felt to me, there was a part of me, and I remember I said this months before this ever happened, I said, there's a chance that this can be the first Star Wars movie in this Disney regime that's a miss for them. That's a kind of a misstep. And then all this stuff comes out, and it kind of validated my position, because the way everything was coming together, it just felt a little off. It just felt off to me. It just felt like something wasn't coming together. And now we're seeing the repercussions of that. And I do think I do think basically they're going to redo the movie. Like, similar situation we saw with Rogue One, how they're able to save the movie. I thought the movie turned out very, very good despite all of the flaws. I feel like it could have been a little bit better. I felt like it could have been better at the box office. They would have tweaked the little things here or there, but that's besides the point. The point is, I do think that this is very troubling to me. I know some people say, oh, no, it's fine. I said, no, this is very, very concerning. I do, however, think that they can easily turn this around.
I don't see Ron Howard coming on to be a ghost director, really. I mean, there's a guy who's done he's made, I think, of all the movies Ron Howard has made over the years. And like I said, he is a guy who knows what he's doing. And I'm looking over Lawrence Kasdan's list of director's credits. I mean, The Big Chill, Silverado, Accidental Tourist. None of them scream, except for Silverado. Silverado was actually really good. I really like that one.
I like the three you mentioned, though.
Yeah. Most recently, he did Darling Companion, Dreamcatcher, and Mumford. Honestly,
the last two I liked.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those three, but I don't think Lawrence Kasdan. They're probably going to bring Ron Howard in to be the principal, be the main director, but sort of to help Lawrence Kasdan, I think. Hey, Ron, how do you do this? And they're probably going to share a lot of ideas. And Ron Howard is going to be the director of credit, but I think Lawrence Kasdan is probably going to have a lot more to contribute.
Right.
And like I said, this what were Phil Miller and Lord?
Yeah.
Those two guys.
Phil Lord, Chris Miller. Yep.
Yeah. They were trying to make this more of a comedic movie, and we were saying last time, Han Solo is really not a comedic character. I mean, yeah, he throws out some snarky one-liners, and he has some moments, but it's not suited to an improvisational type of script that Miller and Lord were looking to do. And Kathleen Kennedy is a very regimented sort of producer. No, you have to shoot what is on the paper right here. And like I was saying in the last podcast, that doing an improvisational type of movie actually has a share of its problems. Nobody knows what anybody's going to do. And we've seen it in other films that you constantly try to one-up the other actors. That just makes for a lot of really, lame bits, really.
And as a comic, you would know that too, right? How you're always trying to look for the next best joke. I kind of seen that with other comedy. I remember hearing about, I think you even covered this too. Yeah, you're the guy that narrated it, Robbie. I remember you narrated that episode of Midnight's Edge talking about the Ghostbusters production, how the actresses there were butting heads. And I think part of that could have been because of the comedy bits, and maybe one's trying to outdo each other, one's trying to lead the scene, the other's trying to steal a scene from the other actress. So we could be seeing that here too, because there's always going to be that clash. And this is just speculation, like you said, but there could be that thing where, again, some of the actors are like, this isn't a comedy, and then you have some that are kind of going with it, and that can create some animosity and conflict. From what I read, I think they were basically like, oh, we're powerhouses in Hollywood. We can basically strong arm what we want in the movie, and Kennedy won't do anything. Disney will love us for it, and then all of a sudden they're like, nope, you're fired. You're done. Terminated.
Yeah, I can say that you are partly right. Well, you're mostly right about the improv creating tension. So I was in an improv comedy group, and there were times where off stage where something would go wrong, and I hate, not to throw anybody under the bus. Oh, it was a number of years ago. You would have various people in the group saying, "Don't you ever step on my bit again," and it would create a lot of tension. I mean, when you have people who really aren't good with working with certain other people in the group, and okay, fine. Sometimes it could lead to something good, but most times it didn't. It really didn't. It's a lot. There's going to be a lot more misses in that type of situation.
Right.
It really is an adventure, action adventure. People say Star Wars, oh, it's sci-fi. I'm like, no, it's really more of an action adventure movie set in a sci-fi setting than a sci-fi movie. I always thought it had more in common with something like something like Lord of the Rings than it did with something like 2001. But that's just me.
Right. It's more of the hero's journey, the adventure, than it is to do with the spaceships and everything. That's just a backdrop, kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you could easily transposed into another world, but now with different aesthetic details, and still works.
Right. But not to switch gears on the whole thing. I know a lot of people are kind of holding Kathleen Kennedy over the flames for this and holding her very responsible for this. And I mean, we got to look at it both ways, and that's kind of what we try and do here anyways, look at both sides of the situation and what the possibility could be somewhere hopefully in the middle usually, or, you know, unless we have other evidence otherwise, then we know for sure. But I think that you brought up a good point, and that's kind of what brought me to this, and it's a good segue because Kathleen Kennedy said from the start that this was going to be like an adventure, you know, swashbuckling kind of movie because, let's face it, Han Solo is a space pirate. So that's kind of what she was going for probably. Now, who is to say that just because Kathleen Kennedy is the head of Lucasfilm, she still has other people that she has to answer to. Who's to say that somebody up above her wasn't really heavy duty, or a few people weren't really heavy duty on Chris and Phil and said, we want them to do this because you could give us another Guardians of the Galaxy if you do. They're funny and we got sci-fi. It's the perfect mix. So just even though she didn't want them to be the directors, they were basically forced upon her. And that kind of makes more sense, especially with some of the stories that are coming out about how basically she just didn't get along with them from the very start. And the rumor was that she did, you know, that she didn't even like the way they folded their socks, which is just another way of saying that everything they did rubbed her the wrong way. And I mean, some people are thinking that she's in over her head, but I don't think people really think back on the history that this woman has in the film industry. And despite any of...
She's been in it for so many years with Steven Spielberg from standing back from the 80s. I mean...
Yeah, from the late 70s on through, she's been one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood and one of the most successful. So I don't think that she's going to make a mistake like hiring somebody like Chris and Phil and then turn around and fire them 3 or 4 months after the fact and, you know, just make that kind of mistake lightly. I really don't see that. But this also goes to show, like, a movie I believe she also produced, Back to the Future. They were unable to get Michael J. Fox when they first wanted to cast him, so they were forced to cast another actor, Eric Stoltz, in the part. And basically the studio and Spielberg promised Robert Zemeckis, if things weren't working out, that they would recast him, which they ended up having to do. So I think that's kind of a similar situation here, as to where they told her, okay, take him on, please do this for us, and if it doesn't work out, you can bring somebody else in. Who's to say she didn't want to bring in Ron Howard to begin with?
That's very true, yeah. That is very true. I mean, like, we don't know all the details, but
I mean, I'm not saying, because I know a lot of people have issues with Kathleen Kennedy's political views, and I'm not bringing that into this. What I'm saying is I can't sit there and see people bash her like they are and blame her for this whole situation when I know her experience, and I don't think this is not the kind of mistake that she would just make. This is an Amy Pascal type mistake, not a Kathleen Kennedy type mistake.
No, I mean, for her to actually fire someone, I think they would have to do something pretty grievous. Well, we don't know what the incident that led to them being fired either. That was
right.
It could have been something on set that happened, and
from the rumor I heard it was the dailies were coming in, and the studio finally seen what Kathleen Kennedy was seeing. I think is kind of what the story went down, in that they were doing all the improvisation and stuff that they had not agreed to.
Yeah, like I said, the dailies, or what they would call rushes. They used to call rushes,
right?
Actually, well, yeah, back in the day. An improv script, especially a movie like a Star Wars movie like that has a lot of big set pieces, or that could have a lot of big set pieces. You set a shot that's going to cost over like $500,000 or even $1 million. You've got to get it right.
Right. Or you're just looking at a 19-hour work day, 3 days or 4 days or 5 days on the same set because you can't get it right.
Yeah, I mean, so there's not a lot of wiggle room there.
And that could be too. They could have been costing too much money by putting things way over time. Maybe they hadn't gotten nearly as much done as they were supposed to at this point. I mean, I'm not trying. And then at the same time, you know, like I said, you hire a director because you want a certain kind of film. They had to have known going into what type of directors these guys were. It really kind of just boggles my mind, because these guys directed an animated film, and animated films are very tight. You do your improvisation ahead of time when you're writing and stuff. And that's why didn't these guys, maybe that's what they didn't do. Maybe they didn't bring up a lot of their plans ahead of time because they thought, oh, we'll get into it once we get on the set. And that's not what Disney and Kathleen Kennedy wanted. They didn't want blazing saddles in space.
What is proving to me with Kathleen Kennedy, they want security. They want things to be very straight-laced, straightforward. They want to know this is what's going to happen. Okay, bam, do it, go. They don't want this improvisation, this, not, I won't say instability, but again, this ambiguity in a sense.
They don't want an unpredictable atmosphere.
Yeah.
Right. The spontaneous is the word I was looking for.
Which is very similar. So, yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it is regardless of whose fault it is, it's done, it's over with. As long as the movie doesn't miss its release date, I have no fears that Ron Howard is more than capable of handling this film. And my fear now is that, like you guys said, it's just going to be the first misstep for this Disney Star Wars universe, and it's going to cause a big uproar and a probably big division among Star Wars fans.
Because there are a group of people that were like the haters that didn't like The Force Awakens, that you guys are just getting A New Hope, rebooted again and pretty much a remake of it. And in some ways they're right. I still enjoyed The Force Awakens quite a bit. But I do think we may be seeing this thing where it may give them some traction to say, hey, look, see, Kathleen Kennedy doesn't know what she's doing. Disney doesn't know what they're doing.
And you're talking about mainly what are the extended universe fans who are all upset that since it was bought by Disney, they decided to basically erase the extended universe. So a lot of them have basically been against every single thing that Disney has done thus far. You just had a lot of them that couldn't really say anything about Rogue One because for the most part Rogue One was a decent film. But you're right, here's something that's going to give them ammunition. You're going to have another group of the just Star Wars fans in general, the blind ones who love it all. If you say anything bad about the prequels, they freak out. You know what I mean? You're going to get a lot of those that are going to love this film no matter what because it's got Star Wars on it. So then you're going to have all the EU fans and people who just, are totally against this from the start, because this is one that I've heard the most people against.
You have a lot of people, and even this is with Marvel too. There's a lot of people out there who are just waiting for something to fail. They are just,
right,
for whatever reason. I don't know what you call them. You call them haters. You call them hipsters. Whatever. And there's a lot of people who were very, I don't want to say they were against Disney buying Star Wars and Lucasfilm as the whole body of work, but the fact that it is now owned by the mouse, they associate, that's kids movies. Oh, I outgrew Disney a long time ago. Nothing they could do it will be worth my while. Oh no, I can't possibly like that now. And there is something very uncool to a lot of people about being owned by Disney. Like a lot, like, oh my God, that's Disney, because Disney sort of represents the big corporate machine to them.
Right.
And I can't help but thinking, listen, the reason why they're this huge company is because they know what they're doing. Their entire business model is making people happy. And you can't argue with the results so far.
No, and
kind of look creepy the way you said that. But
it's
yeah,
true. It's true though. He's got a good point, and unfortunately, this is Disney's problem, and there's nothing any of us or anybody else can do until Disney figures out a way to get around that. They've managed to, like, okay, so when you go see a Marvel movie or you go see a Star Wars movie, it doesn't say Disney in front of it. It just says Marvel Studios or it says Lucasfilm. They've done that much to show you, hey, yeah, these are distributed by Buena Vista, but they're not technically Disney movies. And I think that's where Kevin Feige came out about Marvel here. He's had to finally say, there's always a possibility if something comes along and we see it as an R-rated film, we could do it as an R-rated film. But as of right now, they don't see any reason to do an R-rated film in the Marvel Universe, and that's understandable. We could possibly one day get an R-rated Star Wars film. Do I think we ever will? Fuck no. But that's just it. A lot of you're right. There was a small group of people that were a tad leery when Disney did take over Star Wars. But if it was Disney 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd be a lot more worried. I know now I wasn't worried because I knew how they had handled Marvel to that point. So that is why I wasn't worried. But I understand other people's concerns. And then you have those extended universe fans we keep bringing up. Those are the ones who always pull the Disney card. And it's really getting old. because Disney has proved time and time again that they're not going to interfere with these movies pretty much, unless there's a point where they probably think they need to step in, because they know better than to mess with a working machine that's already working just fine.
Yeah, of all things, and I've often said, of all things too, I want Disney to buy the rights to the Bond movies just to stick it to those people. Just so,
yeah,
which probably won't happen, but
Right.
But at the same time, it would be a nice middle finger to a lot of them. You don't like we own Marvel and Star Wars? Okay, we've got Bond too. What are you gonna do about it?
It's hard for people to realize that at one time, not only did Disney own the rights to Pinhead, they own the rights to Michael Myers as well. So I mean, it's not like this company is against, having properties in that range. It's just they need to either start another company again, like they used to have with Touchstone/Hollywood Pictures back in the day, or which they do bring out the Touchstone banner once in a great while. I think aren't still the Pirates of the Caribbean movies under the Touchstone banner, if I'm not mistaken? I think the first one was, but the rest of them might be under Disney. Same thing they pulled on Nightmare Before Christmas, because when that was first released, it was released under Touchstone because it was rated PG. But then when they re-released it here a few years back for the anniversary, they threw on the Disney title and took off the Touchstone credit.
Yeah. One thing I remember was that when have either of you guys seen Princess Mononoke?
I have been for many, many, many years.
Okay, well, I remember reading stories about how when Princess Mononoke was first released in the U.S., that people couldn't get away from Disney had such a problem with it because people were going to see it and they thought it was a Disney animated movie, and there were reports of people taking crying children out of the movie, and so even though that they don't have the imprint on everything, there still is sort of the shadow they cast over everything. It's a pretty long shadow. But
that's what I mean, that they have to that's something they got to figure out how to get around. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, that sort of feeds into that point, was that they really don't know how to get out from underneath that. It would be nice if they did. It would free up a lot of people to just sort of let that part go and say, oh, I'm not watching a Disney movie. I'm watching a Marvel movie. I'm watching, like I said, I'm watching a Mike Myers movie, or I'm watching a Star Wars
Schwarzenegger.
movie. Yeah, Schwarzenegger, whatever it is. Yeah. The perception of them really it doesn't hurt them, but like I said, it would be nice.
Not like it used to, but it still is used against it. It's still a stigma attached to it that they need to find a way to shake. And one of the biggest and best ways to do that would possibly be an R-rated Marvel movie.
Even with Netflix, though, I mean, the Netflix shows, that should tell people that they're not.
People don't understand, though, that they don't even realize that ABC, ESPN, all these companies are attached to Disney.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of it, yeah.
I mean, just because it's on Netflix, it's still produced by Disney.
That's all Disney money. That's Disney bucks right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it just shows you how it's kind of scary how much they own. Like, they own ABC, like I said, ESPN, of course, Marvel, and all. It's like, you're like, oh my God, they actually own way more than you think you do. And it's like, kind of, because there's this thing where there's always just like this funny, joke people do where like the mouse is going to control everything and monopolize the entire industry, or whatever. And it's kind of true though, because in a way they do.
I'm more scared to see, not to get too far off track, but right now what my fear is to see who takes over the company. Because as much as I don't agree with a lot of his politics, Bob Iger, I do think he's a very good businessman. He brought Disney back from the inevitable death that it almost ran into years ago. I mean, people made a big deal about Disney spending $4 billion on Star Wars. That's chump change compared to the money they were losing before that. You know what I mean? Because if you go back, and one of the first videos I posted on this channel was the top 20 grossing films and the top 20 biggest bombs of all time. And out of the top 10, Disney had some of the biggest bombs, and most of those were those early 2000s to late 2000s, where you had like Mars Needs Moms and all this other shit that was costing them tons and tons of money. And they were at a point where they were going to just basically, their animation department wasn't doing anything. Pixar was the only thing that they had that was doing any money, and there was a point where they were going to lose Pixar. I mean, people don't realize that these guys came back from the dead almost. There was a point where Disney just like almost completely lost it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like you said, Bob Iger will do everything in his power to make sure the Han Solo movie gets fixed the right way too. So I really don't think we should worry that much about.
It's the future, like I said. It's going to be whoever takes over after Bob leaves next year. That's going to be my big concern, is to see where the company goes from there.
I'm sure they're grooming somebody in the chain of command to take over for him. I'm pretty certain.
I could see this movie being the first one that flunders, is a misstep for them, because the way everything's coming together. And again, people didn't really want this Han Solo movie. Like, here's how I think it should have happened. I think a Han Solo thing should have been their first venture into maybe a Star Wars miniseries, and then eventually segue into maybe getting the Knights of the Old Republic to be basically the sci-fi version of Game of Thrones, pretty much. And just Star Wars. And I think that would have been a great idea. And I think Han Solo would have worked so well as a TV series, a miniseries. Maybe at the most 10 episodes, you can really flesh out the story. Maybe, 10 episodes is really good for that. And that's the thing where I feel like you could have had some episodes that were comedic, some episodes that were more serious. You could have had a nice diversity of tone while also keeping the Star Wars feel and aesthetic to it. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how this Han Solo movie turns out. I will say one thing. I would not be surprised, one, if, like I said before, the entire movie is being redone. Two, if this movie gets pushed up. And I should say gets pushed back.
Yeah, that's a slight possibility.
One of the things, though, is that a lot of people are concerned now about episode 9 and Colin Trevorrow,
I think is pronounced.
However he pronounces his name.
Yeah.
Colin. Just Colin. A lot of people could, because now he has, this movie, The Book of Henry, has been getting lambasted by a lot of critics. But from what I hear, it's a bad movie, but it's not The Room bad.
Well, the biggest problem is he called it The Book of Henry instead of The Movie of Henry. People don't know it's a movie.
They're going to Barnes & Noble saying, I want The Book of Henry. Oh, boy. But, but everybody makes a stinker. Nobody is immune to that. That's really all I have to add to that.
What did he direct before that, though? That was his big movie.
Didn't he do Jurassic World?
Jurassic World, but he did something else. He did he did some like small movie.
Okay.
What was it?
Safety Not Guaranteed.
Safety Not Guaranteed.
Okay, so all right, so he's done Jurassic World. He's proved that he could do a big blockbuster movie. That part I'm not worried about. What I am worried about is I was not the biggest fan of Jurassic World, and then now this to happen, I kind of get some people's concerns, but at the same time, he's probably going to have a lot of people over top of him making sure that he's not making any silly mistakes. So, I mean, I haven't seen the Book of Henry to really comment on the film itself, so I don't know what issues people are having with it, because it doesn't matter how good of a director you are. It doesn't matter how good of actors you have. If the story's shit, there's nothing you can do.
Well, in the Book of Henry, it's kid's a boy genius, and he dies, and he leaves a plan behind for his mother to kill like her landlord or whatever it is with a sniper rifle.
Okay.
To me, it just seems like, you know what? And she actually tries to go through with it without realizing how a dumb idea it is. I think it would be more interesting that if she realized, hey, this is actually a pretty dumb plan.
Even Spielberg made 1941, so.
He also made Pan, which was kind of divisive.
Or you mean Hook?
Yeah. I mean, Cook, that's it.
Yeah, see, at least Hook's gotten a lot more, as far as, like, it's gotten more of a cult audience over the years. 41's still hard to stomach. It was, like, one of those movies where, I don't know if you know I'm sure Rob knows the movie I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
It was Spielberg's attempt at comedy.
Yeah. Actually, with John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd is in it. Actually, Robert Stack is in it.
John Candy, I think.
John Candy is actually in
it.
And Ned Beatty is actually in it.
All kinds of people.
And at the beginning, you remember the girl who goes for a swim and she gets scooped up by the submarine? That is actually the same girl who's in Jaws.
Who played Chrissy in Jaws, And that was the thing, is it was basically, you could tell what Spielberg was trying to do. He was trying to do a Mad Mad World type comedy in a time where that kind of comedy had already been played out.
Yeah, well, Nancy Allen was also, and Tim Matheson was also in it, yeah.
Oh, it's just an all-star cast. I actually have it on Blu-ray, and I haven't watched it. I mean, I used to have the DVD. I have not watched it in probably like 10 years, but I guess this version that's on Blu-ray is an extended director's cut.
That's going to make a world of difference.
How much worse could it be? Oh, man. But anyway, back on track, I guess. What do we got next in line here? Justice League talk?
Yes, getting into Justice League. I know we addressed this before, the whole thing with the reshoots, and of course, Joss Whedon stepping, unfortunately, because, the advent of what happened with Zack Snyder's daughter, unfortunately taking her own life. And then we have Danny Elfman coming on for the score as well, going to be taking over for Junkie XL. And also we're going to have a new trailer that's going to come out. Now, what I'm hearing from the reports that I'm seeing is that the trailer is pretty much going to be rebooting the entire tone. It's pretty much going to be like, okay, look, this is now not a Zack Snyder movie. This is a Joss Whedon movie. We're completely redoing the tone. This is part of our new regime of the DCEU. And you're going to get basically a totally different feel, so people know what they're going to get when
Marvel
they go in.
Universe 2.0.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
We kind of knew that was going to happen when Joss Whedon was going to come in. We did kind of know that he was going to. This is probably going to be like a soft reboot of the whole thing. You know, oh yeah, this is like they're gonna for want of a better expression, they're gonna Wrath of Khan it. So, like much like when they rebooted, there was like Wrath of Khan was a soft reboot from Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
God damn it, Barry.
Barry.
Yeah, that's the joke that's been going around. Everybody bitches about Barry Allen in the TV series on The Flash because he keeps changing the time.
Okay.
All of a sudden, like, everything changes or whatever.
First scene of the movie is going to be the Flash just to run. All of a sudden, flat. Ah, shit, damn it, Barry.
But it's something. But yeah, I'll let you guys give your thoughts on that as well. What you guys think about.
I just don't want to see the dopey Death of Superman storyline. I don't want to see that stupid black costume. And Henry Cavill with a mullet.
I actually want to see that because I think he would look pretty cool. The suit, the way the suit would look, I'm not gonna lie, because I like black suits.
If they do it without Sans mullet, maybe.
I think the mullet would be kind of cool, though. To be honest, he looked like an old man, kind of.
Oh God, I can see the reviews now. Joe Dirt Superman.
Maybe that will be the case, but I don't know. For me, it's like I'm just like. You know they're basically going to redo the entire movie at this point. We already know it was going to be a Joss Whedon movie, not a Zack Snyder movie. It may have hints of Zack Snyder in there, but it will be a Joss Whedon movie.
What's this going to do to the budget? Jeez.
Right, exactly. Oh, God. Okay, I will say this. I've said this before. If the movie comes out and it's good, because I'll be honest with you, I like the Avengers. I thought the Avengers had a little bit of issues with the movie because I feel like people are like, oh, it's happening for the first time, so it has to be great. And if you look at it now, it's kind of a slow movie. It's kind of a slow burn if you look at it.
I actually like Age of Ultron a little bit better, but yeah.
In some ways I do. But if you look at the greater scheme of things, the movie comes out and it ends up being this weird Frankenstein of a movie with two different tones. I think there's a chance that it can really do a pretty bad blow to the DCEU, not kill it, but really do some damage. But if it comes out and it's great, it's going to solidify the DCEU for the next couple of years. That it has a shot at really being a success.
Yeah, I had no disagreement there. I mean, no, I think there's a lot more writing on this than there was on Wonder Woman.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say that.
This is the one that they absolutely have to get right because it's going to set the table for all the other releases, Aquaman, Cyborg, and probably another Batman movie. They're going to have to make sure that they're going to get this right. I'm just wondering, like I said, what's going to happen to the budget? How much is this movie going to have to make to make its money back?
I think that the budget has got to have ballooned at this point close to $500 million. It has to have. There's no way it hasn't because you can believe what Warner Brothers reports for the budget of Batman v Superman. I don't buy it. I think it's closer to twice what they're reporting. So I'm thinking we're already hitting that range for this probably.
The budget for Batman v Superman, they said was like $250 million. But from what I read, there's some that speculate it was closer to 450.
Yeah.
So this is, like I said, this is probably going to get up into the 500 million range easily because they got to go back and redo so much stuff.
Well, I'm not entirely sure about all the sources on some of these stories.
No. I just pulled up Box Office Mojo. I pulled up IMDb or whatever. There are no reports for budgets so far, so they're keeping that under wraps. It's got to be over 4.
They'll probably report somewhere in the 300 range, maybe. But that's what's kind of concerning me. It's like, okay, you had a situation here. It wasn't even a couple weeks ago when this all went down. They're like, oh, no, we're not changing the tone. We're not changing too much of the movie. Don't worry. Joss is just coming in to finish the movie. Everybody remembers this, right? I don't live in an alternate...
Which I knew was a lie.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I'm not living in an alternate universe, right? I'm on Earth 1, correct?
You are on Earth 1.
So here we go. A couple of weeks later, all of a sudden, now they're telling us it is being almost completely redone. We are getting a new trailer, and it is basically more or less to show us that, hey, this is not Zack Snyder's tone. This is Joss Whedon's tone. That's the exact report we're basically getting from this. And not only that, we're going to see Superman. Okay. I think we were right all this time. Despite what some of the people thought that, there's various people, especially within the groups that we're in, that were really pretty much positive that the movie was not going to be changed too much. We're going to get Zack Snyder's Justice League no matter what. And I said, I don't think so. Just the same thing with like Ron Howard we were talking before. You don't bring somebody like Joss Whedon on board to just have him hang out and say, hey guys, he's there for a reason. And he was brought on clear back in November. So that tells me that he's had a lot to do with this from the start, or at least from the point where he showed up. And I have a feeling he took over as director a long time ago. I think I'm right about that.
Oh yeah, the people on the inside, they basically selectively disseminate information. Usually the information that we're getting to the public has already been in place weeks or months prior. Again, I do think Joss Whedon is basically going to redo the movie. I don't know how the legality is going to work. I do think he's going to get directing credit on it from what I'm seeing.
He'll probably get co-credit.
But I will say this. There's a chance that perhaps maybe Joss Whedon coming on may divide fans, because what if the tone is so different that it starts to alienate a lot of the DCEU fans, and then they're like, wait, we didn't want this. We wanted the Zack Snyder, and then you make it this clash.
The only way you're going to have that, I get exactly what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. The thing I see happening is if the movie's good. If the movie is really good, and those diehard fanboys who still don't want to admit that Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad are subpar or shit, they're the ones that are going to have the biggest bitch. They're going to say, oh, it's just shit. This is not what we wanted. We didn't want Avengers 2.0. We wanted DC. You know what I mean? That's what you're going to get out of them. And it's still that small group. What's going to really speak volumes is once you get the numbers in there like the Avengers films for DC, and they're going to see that money come in. As long as Joss Whedon does exactly what they're hoping he's going to do, they're going to have him take control of this universe from here on out, basically. And I think that's going to make him happy too, because then he'll finally have the power and pull that he wanted over in Disney.
Well, that's one of the big things that many the really staunch DC fans always say. Oh, yeah, DC is more mature. DC movies are more mature. Yeah, they're dark and gritty. They're not for kids like the Marvel movies. I'm like, guys, no, that they're not for kids. They're not for anybody. It seems that they're not.
Not for the general audience, that's for damn sure. No, that's the problem. You can't sit here and tell me, though, that there's anything more deeper in Batman v Superman compared to The Winter Soldier.
I'm about to head out, and it was great talking to you again, Rob. And of course, I look forward to working with you again. It's been great.
Thanks.
Talk to you later. Okay, so according to the weekend box office estimates so far that we have, considering it's before Monday, so we don't have the exact numbers, so forgive us. If anything changes between now and the time I get the video up, of course, I will put the number on the screen. Transformers, though, appears to have made 45 million over the weekend, but I think there was reports that it actually did more like 37. I'm not sure how they're adding in all the extra days because it opened up on Wednesday, I believe it was, Tuesday night for early showings. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It did a lot less than I thought it was going to do. Cars and Wonder Woman look like they're neck and neck right now, but I think I heard Wonder Woman made just a little bit more than Cars with just over 25 million for the weekend both, and that puts Wonder Woman well over its $300 million range for the domestic box office. So 47 meters dropped 33% to 7 million, and All Eyes on Me dropped 77% all the way down to 5 million, which is kind of surprising but not surprising, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. First, I want to get your kind of overall take on the box office for the weekend.
People are getting tired of Transformers movies. I mean,
the mayhem has come to an end.
Really, I mean, it's still going to make money, just not as much, but I mean, yeah, I mean, how many more of these things are we gonna have to sit through, really?
Well, I guess at least a Bumblebee spinoff anyway for now. That's been announced, and I guess they set that up in this movie. I didn't see it, and I assume you didn't see it, so.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's still, I'm not sure how well comparatively it's doing to the last movie overseas, but I actually have the numbers. It made 13 million in Korea. It's made 8.9 million in Russia, 5.7 million in the UK, 4.7 in Germany, Taiwan 4.1, Australia 3.6, the Philippines 3.3, Malaysia 2.8, Thailand 2.8, Hong Kong 2.5 million, Singapore 2.2, and Italy it has made 1.9 million. So
and China's not on there, is it?
China's not on that
I think
list
I heard
yet.
I've heard it's doing really well in China. In fact, the bulk of its money it's made already has been in China from what I know of.
It says it here, 124 million from China.
Wow.
Alone. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, because it's done over almost 200 million already, almost overseas. And needless to say, I think that's kind of about where I think I called. If I remember right, I think I called it between 60 and 70. And I was surprised it even did this low. But I'm not. I guess at the same time, so it's kind of like, I knew it was kind of what it was going to do. Doesn't surprise me. It's getting some of the worst. I mean, obviously, we knew it was going to get lambasted by the critics, but even though I haven't seen hardly any of what I would consider just the general audience, I guess, thinking it's a good movie, they all say the same thing. It's more of the same.
This
just
is
basically
going to be a movie that's
expected.
definitely going to do better overseas than it is going to do over here. And I think that's just where we are now. I mean, it's still going to do well, but I think we've had our fill of Transformers movies for the time being.
I think it's played out. No, I was going to say, I think it's played out, but I guess as long as it keeps selling toys and playing overseas, we're going to keep getting them.
We're not going to get to a point where they only make it for overseas markets. That's definitely.
I was going to say, as long as it makes at least 100 to 150 here, they're going to keep making them.
Yeah. So we're going to have the Transformers for a while, people. Don't worry.
At least we can do is hope.
You're going to make plenty more fun
His
of
hope
it.
once a different director takes over, at least maybe things will be a little bit more coherent. Perhaps. But I think we've reached a point, especially here in the U.S., where a lot of the original younger fans for the series have kind of grown up and have grown out of it, and you basically turned away all the classic fans a long time ago. So I think, like I said, I think around in the U.S., I think it's kind of played out.
Yeah, the 80s nostalgia is kind of wearing off.
Right.
The big thing is 90s nostalgia, and who really knows why. And I remember the 90s. 90s weren't all that great. I mean, there were parts of it that were pretty good.
But we've gotten the same movie 5 times now. I mean, how many times can they retcon the Transformers history? And
I'll admit, I was excited to see the first one. I mean, hey, cool, Transformers.
The first one's good.
Yeah, cool. First Transformers. Yeah, and see them on the screen, biggest life. That was something. But like I said, we've gotten the same movie over and over again.
Yeah, it's been the exact same movie for the last 4 movies.
I think everybody's waiting around for Spider-Man now.
I think so. I think that I can feel the anticipation in the air.
The box. I think we're going to see. Actually, there's a Baby Driver comes out this week.
Yeah, that's supposed to be getting really good reviews. That's not a movie I generally would go see in theaters, but if it does really well and it hangs around for a while, I might go out and see it. Because it does look pretty funny.
Yeah, that's Edgar Wright's new film.
Yeah.
From, as everybody knows, from Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End, and the director who was removed from Ant-Man.
Right.
Yeah. So he does good work, and I just actually rewatched The World's End recently. I try to work out when I can, and I'm usually like I'm gonna have an exercise bike, and I watch. I have an iPod. I watch. I don't have an iPhone, people, so cut me some slack.
I like all those movies you mentioned. Yeah, I like that.
I rewatched The World's End when I'm on the bike, and actually that is a really good movie.
It is. Yeah. It's good.
But like I said, there's not going to be much for the next week and a half except for Baby Driver, really.
I hope it does well. I really do. We need movies like that to do well. We need good movies that are original to do well, because that'll show the studio what we want. See, that's the problem. They keep throwing shit at us that's so gimmicky, and then they like, well, you don't like shit that's original. I guess we got to make another Garfield or Chipmunks movie because you got to have something that you know. And that's not true. You just need to make a good movie. A good movie will make money, and I hope it does, because from everything I've heard, it's a really good movie. I think it's getting like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look here real quick, but yeah.
I would like to see Baby Driver succeed.
Me too. It'd be nice.
Just because it's original. And like I said, Edgar Wright seems like a good guy, decent guy. So,
other than that, there was that controversy going on now with the Tupac film. I don't think that had anything to do with its box office dive, but we may get into that a little more when I get a little bit more details on it. But basically, there was a gentleman who, I think Keith Powell was his name, forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, he had done a bunch of interviews back in the day with Tupac as he was becoming famous, and the two of them had basically corroborated or worked together on the interviews to where they basically worked out kind of a fictional narrative, even though they were presenting it as Tupac's life story. And the reason this is significant is because Keith Powell claims that the new film uses a lot of things that were in those interviews, and basically he's claiming intellectual property for the most part on those interviews between him and Tupac, and saying that they basically plagiarized his interviews. And this is the first time I've seen a plagiarism case come up in a long time that actually had some weight to it. Because, like, I think this Frozen one, I think that one just got thrown out. If not, it probably will, because this lady's claiming that they stole her life story. I don't know where the hell she gets that idea, but anyway, and this comes up all the time. You see it constantly. Every year or two, there's at least one or two every year is what I wanted to say. But this is the first time I actually read into it, and I was like, oh, this guy does have a case, because if he can prove that he and Tupac actually made these stories up, or at least glamorize them for the interviews, and basically can prove that there isn't a fight for intellectual property there, Lionsgate could find themselves in some
We'll have to
trouble.
wait and see what the case goes to court. They may settle out of court. They may a lot of these cases just kind of go away, or sometimes they get settled out of court. They get a cut of the profits, or they get paid off.
Right.
But,
He'll probably get something out of it, though. If it's true. If it's true. I mean, obviously, like I said, if it's true. So, but we did have, just this last week, Jada Pinkett Smith and 50 Cent and a few others have all come out and said that the movie does take a lot of liberties, which these kind of movies generally do. And that's what the director come out and said, yeah, I had to take some artistic liberties, which is fine. But if those artistic liberties that you took were adopted from these interviews and situations that they artistically came up with, then that's where the plagiarism comes in. Yeah. Like you said, once we find out more, that's something we can talk about then. So that covers the box office for the week. There really wasn't any, I mean, there's some big news this week, but the two big stories were kind of, front loaded, I guess, for the most part. I don't know what else to kind of say to that, other than we do plan and hoping on having some live shows coming up. Unfortunately, Beyond had to leave us a little early in the episode here, but he will be back, I'm sure, next time. Of course, Rob, where can we find you out there on the interwebs?
You can find me at Robot Shlomo on YouTube. You can also find me at Midnight's Edge. And you can also hit me up on Twitter at Robot Shlomo. I'm the only Robot Shlomo on Twitter. It's very easy to find.
Yeah, and if you guys got some time to check out his videos, I suggested. I just finally got to watch last week the Batman versus Superman video you did, and it was hilarious. I mean, I was literally laughing out loud quite a few times. Yeah, so if you guys get a chance, check that out. Of course, I'll have the links down below for Beyond and myself and Midnight's Edge, of course, and everything else you're going to need to know down below. If you have a question or want a topic to be discussed, give us an email. Send it off at filmbuffetpodcast@gmail.com. That, of course, is going to be on screen there if you need to know how it's spelled. It's spelled just like it's spelled for the podcast. So, Rob, anything else you want to say this week or plug or anything like that?
I just want to tell everybody, if we don't get to speak before then, have a good 4th of July. In case we don't get to see there. And if you don't celebrate 4th of July, just go about your business as you normally would.
Well, we do plan on having a few more podcasts, but yeah, since a lot of people, go on vacation and stuff, if you don't get a chance to catch up with us until after then, have a happy and safe 4th of July from us all here at the Film Buffet Podcast.